So what we want to do is we want to play a compilation of some of the things that Stephen A. Smith had to say in response to LeBron James, and then we're going to come back and really get into the show. Take a listen to what he had to say here.
There's several layers to all of this that's not being told. Number one, what's your definition of negativity? If you shoot 2 for 20 and somebody said you played like hot garbage last night, is that negative? Was that factual? Because to me, it's only negative if you continue with that narrative as opposed to neglecting to point out the positive when they perform in a very positive fashion. If I'm celebrating you when you play well, but I'm pointing out when you play bad, that's just me covering the game. But there are people they could talk to. There are stories that could be told. There's a level of genuine truthfulness and honesty and objectivity that could be brought to the equation, but that's not what you want to do because you might not like a particular person when their objective is the story, not you, and to tell those stories. So when you say there's more storytelling that could be told, yeah. Who are people that are in ideal positions to tell those stories? Those very individuals that don't want to tell it unless they want to tell it to who they want to tell it to, as opposed to having folks standing in front of their face, objectively dissecting what they're saying about the story. That's far more important than anything they might be a bit salty about, and they pass on those opportunities. So when you talk about First Take, for example, you brought up First Take. Let's talk about First Take for a second. There's former athletes and present athletes that come on this show all the time. They're always welcome. Always welcome. We don't shy away from that. You got something you want to debate? Fine. You got something you want to promote? Fine. You got something you want to big up? Fine. We have no problem with that. But because somebody talked about you playing like trash in the playoffs when you did something you would openly admit you did later on, suddenly you don't want anything to do with them. You're persona non grata. I'm saying to you, there's a grown-up element to all of this that people don't gravitate to. And then they got cats in the podcast stratosphere, all right, that literally confirm and condone that kind of mentality until they're forced to speak truth to power about what's transpiring, and then the players themselves turn against them. And so when we look at this negativity and just say to national media, nah, that ain't good enough. Because there's people, your brethren, former players, present players, with a microphone, with a camera, that got absolute carte blanche to speak truth to power, and they know what they're talking about, and then you challenge them because, not even because it's false, but because you said, nah, that's not something you say. That's not something you publicize. And they go after their own. So when we talk about national media, who's Rich Kleiman talking about? Who's LeBron James co-signing on with that? What are you talking about exactly? Give examples. We're all ears. We're all ears. But they won't do that. You know why? Because then you get challenged. And you're getting challenged on the level of consistency that you may be lacking with your argument. My brother, Wendy, I like the shop. I think they've done a hell of a job. Pedro, Maverick, and the rest of the crew, nothing but love from me. But let me be very, very clear. It ain't like First Take. And I'm going to tell you why. Because there's very, very little resistance when LeBron opens his mouth about something. There's very little that challenges some of the things that he says, okay? And I can say that because I'll put myself on Front Street when Maverick or Rich have joked with me about coming on the shop, because I do believe they were joking when they were saying that. I've said this to them, and I meant it from the bottom of my heart. I'll show up, name the time and place. Oh, by the way, no editing. Make sure that what I say is in there. You understand? Don't sit up there and edit me out and cut me out. Oh, no. Let's have that real conversation. I ain't never been invited. Ain't no accident. We know what time it is. See, people can talk all they want to. But at the end of the day, it comes down to that level of truth and how truthful and authentic are you willing to have a conversation with. When Kleiman brought up JJ and LeBron, okay, that's fine. Y'all were talking pure basketball. We appreciate that, and basketball junkies should appreciate that. Excellent, excellent podcast with the both of them. You learn so much. Both of them are basketball savants as far as I'm concerned. But the world doesn't consist of savants. And the world ain't always interested in listening to savants be savants all the damn time. Sometimes they want stuff normalized. They want it to a degree where even though you're dissecting it with a fine-tooth comb and you're showing the world that you know what most don't, in the end, at some point in time, there's a bottom line factor that comes into the equation. What's the result? Are you going to win or are you going to lose? What's the real reason this happened? A lot of times they ain't going to dime out their teammates. They ain't going to dime out their coach. They ain't going to tell you how LeBron felt about Darvin Ham, for example, right? But we know that you were doing a podcast with JJ, and JJ ends up being the next coach for the Los Angeles Lakers. Well, if it walks like a duck, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it ain't a damn mongoose.
So you heard what Stephen A. Smith had to say. I agree with almost every single word that he uttered. Almost every single word. I also like the fact how Stephen A. Smith called out LeBron's tendency of trying to control the narrative. He used the example of, he was like, well, if you guys want to have, he said, the reason you guys want to invite me on your show is because you know you're going to have some pushback. And he said, the only way I'll come on your show is if you didn't edit me. You would actually have to release everything the way it was when we did the interview. And he said the reason y'all won't do that is because you don't want to have anybody push back on you. Essentially what he was saying is that when LeBron does these shows, essentially he just wants an echo chamber of where people are going to be saying things that he agrees with. Or rather, he's going to be saying things that people always are going to agree with him. Right? In terms of LeBron trying to turn himself into a victim here, I thought that was pretty comical. It actually was comical. Coming into the season, when people were hyping up Bronny and all of that stuff leading into opening night and what is it, in Summer League and all of that, and training camp and all of that stuff, preseason, I didn't hear any of this. LeBron did sure seem to enjoy the attention on opening night when it was him and he seemed to enjoy it. But what ended up happening was Bronny wasn't living up to the expectations. And it started to get to him. Now, LeBron feeling the type of way of people being critical of his kids, that's totally understandable. But this is the price you pay when you decide to put your kids on full display for the public. People are going to have criticisms. People are going to have things to say. They're just going to.